Hello and welcome to our second podcast in our quote integration series. We're calling this one the style of quote integration, wherein we're going to talk about in-text citations and a little bit about how to frame quotations and paraphrases in order to get them into your writing and so that they don't sound cheesy or like the dreaded quote bombs. So again, here are some of the rules that we need to be following when we are borrowing ideas and words from other texts and putting them into our own writing. So if we borrow words or ideas, we need to give both an in-text citation and a works cited entry for the entire text that we pulled from. If we're going to go ahead and pull quoted words, meaning directly word for word, we must physically put quotation marks around those to let our reader know that we borrowed word for word from another text. Another rule in terms of quoted words, we must take it word for word. So if we're going to put quotes around it, letting our reader know that we're pulling from another text, we must honor that original text by taking it exactly as is. And then the last one here, rule number 4, is more of a style point, but we need to frame our quote. We can't just airlift a quote from some other text and throw it in our own. We must set up where that's coming from. We must set up how that's going to flow into our paper. Put some of our own wording around that quote so that the quote that we're borrowing from this other text flows smoothly. And if we can figure that out, that is a great style point in terms of quote integration. So what do we mean by in-text citations? When we borrow ideas or direct wording from another source, we must place an in-text citation directly after that material. If we have a quote, some words that we've borrowed, right after that, and right after those words surrounded by quotation marks, we need to put an in-text citation to let the reader know that that material was borrowed from another source. So I just mentioned that you need to place it directly after the quoted material. We can wait till the end of a sentence. That's probably less obtrusive than just slamming an in-text citation in the middle. So the end of a sentence would be fine also. The thing we need to be wary of is if we place our in-text citation at the end of a paragraph, that implies that everything before that in-text citation was borrowed. And perhaps it was. A, that's a little bit dangerous that you're just lifting massive amounts of things from another text and slamming it into your own paper. But B, what if you didn't? What if your paragraph was full of some direct quotes from another piece, but then also a lot of your own analysis and your own thinking that you have to have in writing? If you put a citation at the end, it negates your own writing because it implies that everything in front of that citation came from somewhere else. So we just need to be very clear about which stuff was borrowed, that needs a cite, and which stuff is our own writing, that stuff does not. And so here are some examples of using direct words and the in-text citation. For example, maybe you are writing in your essay something about how the conch shell in Lord of the Flies was exceptionally important in maintaining order. So you wrote, Piggy yelled at Ralph to give the conch back. One, maybe those words give the conch back were directly quoted from Lord of the Flies. Therefore, we need to have quotes around them. Two, since we borrowed them directly, we need to give a citation right then, after that quote, to let our reader know that we borrowed those words. And so we make that in-text citation. Parentheses, author's name, space, page number, parentheses. So in this case, it's parentheses, Golding, 56, and parentheses. In MLA formatting that we use at our school, the author's last name is separated from the page number by a space. Not a comma, not a P, not a PP, no page, nothing like that. It's just author's last name, space, page number, in parentheses. And then the thing to notice there is that the period for that entire sentence comes after the citation, because Piggy yelled at Ralph to give the conch back, and then the citation is all one sentence. So you don't need to put two, like one after back, and then another one after the citation. So just one of those nuances there that Piggy yelled at Ralph to give the conch back, Golding 56, then the period. Even though Piggy yelled at Ralph, and Ralph did, quote, give the conch back, Piggy was still angry. Citation, and then a period. So in this case, we have framed the quoted material, give the conch back, in the middle of our own writing. We didn't just make, quote, give the conch back its own sentence because it didn't flow. So we needed to adjust the beginnings and the end of the original sentence, maybe cut some things out so that we can place it in the middle of our writing. Even though Piggy yelled at Ralph, and Ralph did give the conch back, Piggy was still angry. So about 80% of that is my own writing. 20% is borrowed, quoted material because it needed to be done so that it would flow well. But since we borrowed material, we need to cite that at the end of our sentence. So we have the parentheses, we have Golding, page 80, and the period at the end. Do not put the in-text citation right after that quoted material because it's not necessary. You can wait the 4 words and just put it at the end of the sentence and still be giving credit for the words you borrowed. But again, notice the period goes at the end of the entire sentence. Not one after angry and one after the cite, just one at the end of the entire sentence. So some things to think about when we're talking about framing styles. Number 1, the quoted material from our original text that we're pulling into our paper should never just stand alone. I really don't think you should have just quote, then a full-on sentence from your original material, end quote, with a citation. That to me seems awkward, jumpy. It doesn't make much sense in terms of where it came from, where it leads into, so we need to frame. So a couple ways you can do that, number 2 and 3. You can begin your writing of a sentence frame in your own words, then add the quoted material, then you can have a citation. You could also begin your sentence with quoted material, but then frame it at the end with some of your own writing, giving it context, giving it transition into the next sentence, and then you follow with a citation. You could, like the previous example, start with your own words, add quoted material, and then end with your own words too. Needless to say, you need to have that cite as well. The thing to think about is that line at the bottom of this slide. Your end result of a framed quote must still be a complete grammatical sentence. So if I am reading your paper, everything sounds like a complete sentence. So you can't just chop out and quote 2 words from the novel that you're analyzing and just throw it into your own paper and say, well, hey, I put quotes around it in a cite, it's good. No, if you're just going to pull 2 words out for some reason, you still must frame it in a complete sentence to make it more smooth. So here's an example. Let's go ahead and practice a little bit. Let's say the original text from Lord of the Flies was narration. Piggy shouted at Ralph. He yelled, give me the conch. I need the conch to help the group. Okay, so let's pretend that your prompt is defend the idea that the conch was a sign of law and order, and you're trying to prove that through your literary analysis of this point. So at the top, you have what the book actually gives you, and the bottom, what you're trying to prove. So perhaps this could be one way you might frame that quote into your paper. Piggy became very agitated at the breakdown of law and order on the island. He decided that he needed to take matters into his own hands. He screamed that he wanted the conch to, quote, help the group, with a citation and then the period. So notice, most of this writing in this small little chunk is my own created writing. It's from my own head. It's my effort to persuade the reader that my idea on the prompt is valid. I pulled a couple words from the original Lord of the Flies book, and I've put those into quotes, but a majority of the writing is still my own, and I'm using a few words here and there to help me make my point. Please also notice that the citation comes after the quoted material and that the sentence ends with a period. Now, needless to say, after this sentence in my own paragraph, there would have to be more writing, more analysis, but that's going to be in my own words. What you've seen here is just my own wording and framing to try and get into that quoted material that I'm borrowing. I don't just go in there and pull the entire sentence from the original book, throw quotes around it, and throw it into my own paper. I pick and choose what I need, put quotes around that which is word for word, and then smoothly integrate that into my own writing. Here's another example. Wanting, quote, the conch to help the group, quote, Piggy implored Ralph to give him the conch. Piggy knew that this important symbol of power could quell the riot and return the island to a more peaceful setting. Again, most of this sentence frame is my own writing. I have put quotes around the words that I've taken word for word. I've waited till the end of the sentence to put my citation, and that sentence then ends with a period. So again, I don't just write something, pull out one full sentence from the book, put quotes around it, and slam it into my paper. I am taking what I need, I am framing it with my own words, and I'm smoothly integrating it into my own writing. Another way to smoothly integrate or frame these quotes may be to use the colon. So for example, Piggy became very agitated at the breakdown of law and order on the island. He decided that he needed to take matters into his own hands. He screamed the following, colon, quote, I need the conch to help the group, quotes, citation, period. Oftentimes, how this shows up in students' papers that is not smooth is that students write, Piggy became very agitated at the breakdown of law and order. He decided that he needed to take matters into his own hands. Quote, I need the conch to help the group, end quote, cite, period. Okay, you have lifted material from the original, you have quoted it word for word, you have given us a citation and the proper location of the period. Thumbs up to that. But can we make it more smooth? Rather than just jumping from your own writing, matters into his own hands, and jumping into borrowed material, can we frame that a little bit? You, the author, write, he screamed the following, colon, and then go on. That smooths it out. It's not just this random quote slammed into the paper. You have framed it, you have smoothed it out, and you have given the context of why you're including this quotation. That is better framing. And so that's all we have for you right now in terms of the second podcast in the quote integration series. Remember some of those important rules that if you're going to go ahead and borrow material, either ideas or wording from another source, you do need to cite those. Also having the quotation marks around your direct words that you've borrowed. And of course, continue to work on framing those quotes, trying to be very smooth about bringing in material from your other source into your paper. Rather than do the quote bomb where you just pull it from the original and throw it into your own paper, use the framing techniques we've talked about and try to make that a little bit more smooth. As always, if you have any questions, go ahead and bring those in the class. Otherwise, we will see you there and we'll do some practice with this. Thanks a lot.